The Blitz, where we bring you a concept of the Penn State, whether it's offense, defense, going into each particular week. And tonight, we're just going to give you the depth chart because we all saw it for the first time today, and I know everybody's very excited about that. So let's start on the offense. Got the offensive line here. This is we'll call it our brand new board where we're working through all this. So I think the offensive line is very, very interesting because I think this right here was the big unknown. Will Fries, Chaz Wright, both guys that had pretty good years last year. Will Fries came in kind of in the later part of the season after Ryan Bates got hurt. I thought did a very good job. First game, really struggled after that Ohio State game. That was obviously the loss to Michigan State. I thought he showed his ability to be very physical as the season went on, and I think now is going to beat out Chaz Wright over the course of the year for this job. Right guard, Connor McGovern, just absolutely tried, true, consistent, the guy you want up front. Michael Menet, a guy that we knew for years was going to come up and be a strong player. He's going to take over at center. Steven Gonzalez, I'll say this. I think he's a guy that has struggled at times, certainly in the beginning portions of last year, but he's gotten bigger and stronger as well. And it's a common theme as we look at these guys. Every one of these guys has struggled at one point in time in their career. Maybe the only exception to that would be Ryan Bates. Because Ryan Bates, I think we knew for a long time coming in that he could be a guy that can play just about anywhere and play at a very high level. You know, from left to right, back to left. He's played a lot of positions on the offensive line. They thought about moving him into guard, etc. He's actually the key to this offense, I think, because he's protecting Trace McSorley's blind spot and because I think from a run protection perspective, he can do both pass and run protect as well as anybody on this offensive line. On the wide receiver side, KJ Hamler up at the top, a guy that we knew, again, for a few years was going to be a guy that could contribute in his sophomore, junior year. Here he is now coming in on the outside opposite Jawan Johnson, who only had one touchdown last year. I think that's kind of a fun fact. Of course, that one touchdown was quite an entertaining and quite an important one on the road at Iowa to win that game. He's a guy that perhaps could see his last season in Happy Valley this year. If he does as well as people are expecting him to, could bolt for the NFL draft, and I wouldn't blame him with that body type. The tight end position, Jonathan Holland. Jonathan Holland is a guy replacing Mike Gesicki. He's a better blocker. Brian Tripp talked about that in our last segment. And I think with this type of receiving core, with Matt Kippenhammer waiting in the wings, freshman Justin Shorter, and Jahan Dotson, that might be what you need from John Holland, right? Because you have Miles Sanders, and behind him, you have some tremendous running backs. But I think what you're going to see is Ricky Slade get some significant time and be able to go out onto the outside, catch passes out of the backfield, and, of course, also run the ball when needed as kind of a change-up back from Miles Sanders. I think this offense is in a tremendous spot. The fact that you're talking about DeAndre Tompkins as your slot receiver, as your, I don't know if you'd call him your third option, but kind of that third wide receiver in there, I think puts Penn State in a tremendous spot. And this guy right here, Trace McSorley, can have that type of year where now he's the focus, of course, for these defenses more so than when that Sanders was replaced by Saquon Barkley. But I think that he has the receivers. He's going to have better protection where he can have a Heisman Trophy caliber year. On the defensive side of the game, Nick Scott, Garrett Taylor. These are guys that last year did not see time. Nick Scott a little bit early on, but Troy Apke, he came in and won that job, and deservedly so. But now, Scott, I think, is going to have an opportunity to really prove himself, and it's these guys right here, Amani Oruwariye and then John Reed coming back from injury, that is going to allow him to be successful, going to allow him to take more chances, going to allow him to creep up towards the line and stack the box against some of these running teams that you're seeing in the Big Ten. I think guys like Taylor and Scott can be huge against Ohio State if you have John Reed one-on-one against some of those talented receivers, take them off the board, and then make Dwayne Haskins beat you over and through the air. So I think safety is going to be a huge spot, kind of a question mark, but I think a huge spot for this defense this year. Up front, we talked about it a lot before the break, so we won't go into significant detail. But again, besides Sharif Miller here, Robert Windsor, Kevin Givens, and Etor Gross-Matos, guys that are newer to the role. But again, I think the more time you spend in this program, in the weight room, I mean, Gross-Matos is a man. I mean, he's a younger guy, but he is absolutely in a man's body, big, strong, tough, run stopping as well as getting to the quarterback. And as I mentioned before, I think that allows Shaka Toney to be very, very successful in a backup role coming off the edge there. And then at linebacker, Cam Brown, Jan Johnson, a guy that is going to be really solid. You know, you take a look at some of the great Penn State middle linebackers. Jan Johnson reminds you a lot more of that than perhaps a guy like Micah Parsons that we thought maybe could start at the Mike day one. Of course, that's not going to happen. He's coming in the second string behind Koa, behind Cam. They'll find a spot for him certainly to take his snaps. The other guys that I think we can talk about a lot more are the guys behind Jan Johnson. He can get things started. He can be the leader, the veteran that can be that influence on Ellis Brooks as well as Jesse Luketa. And I think both of those guys are going to be role players for Penn State. We mentioned the 4-game rule where guys can now play for 4 games before actually being redshirted. I think that's going to be an entirely new wrinkle within what Penn State is going to do, and it could not come at a better time because there has been no time in Penn State's history that they have had this many freshmen ready to compete on this level, ready to get onto the field on day one. So that's a walk through the depth chart for Penn State, and the Nittany Lions. They have a lot to look forward to this year. And I think these guys here, and some guys not on that board, are going to be huge in terms of Penn State's ability to compete and perhaps chase that undefeated record this year through the regular season. So we'll take a break and come back on the other side. You are watching the Nittany Lions Sports Report.